All right, and now we have two experts here from the data industry. We're joined by Ben Rogojan as well as Sanjeev Mohan. Any questions that the audience has as we're going through this discussion, feel free to put them in the chat here and we'll get to answering those questions quickly. So quick intro of Sanjeev and Ben. So Sanjeev is the principal at SanjMo, and he's a former Gartner research vice president. He's an established thought leader in the areas of data, cloud, analytics, researches and advises on changing trends and technologies in the modern data cloud architecture, data ops, data observability, data governance, and more recently, data products. And Ben, who's fondly known as the Seattle data guy, is a data infrastructure consultant that helps companies implement end-to-end solutions. That means from source to the final destination, whether that's machine learning, models, or dashboarding. In the past few years, he's worked at Facebook and consulted for companies ranging from small startups, PE firms, to large-scale enterprises. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, a lot of questions that we obviously want to ask you. First thing is, data applications, data pipelines, data products, right, are becoming more and more mission critical. Now you can almost say like the success of an enterprise is tied to the performance of their data pipelines and applications, right? Since they're so important, making sure that they work as intended every time is becoming even more critical right now. So how are teams ensuring that these mission critical data pipelines are reliable, they're correct, and they're highly performant? And then what's missing? We'll start with you, Ben.
Yeah, I think, one thing that's interesting to me is that this has always been a problem. I think back even 10 years ago when I first started, a lot of people used to use the term garbage in, garbage out, and I still hear that term today. So I think the thing that's added in particular is the reliability component. When I'm working with clients, I have plenty of them who will often create like basic SQL checks to make sure their data quality is accurate. But then they often run into other issues like, oh, is my report running on time? And I think that's kind of one of the major issues that people are starting to migrate and focus on. And so, I think there's a lot of tooling that has come in the space that I've been able to help implement to help them build more reliable pipelines and build solutions that they can trust beyond just the quality aspect. I think another thing that we're fighting is just the issue that so much tooling has come in like the ingestion and data pipeline side that now I like to say we can make bad decisions faster. So oftentimes, like we almost need this framework of quality and reliability to help kind of manage this like ever expanding, list of data pipelines that, even a small company might have like 100 data pipelines that they're trying to manage with a small team. So I often see that that's, very important. I think the other interesting thing is like I've recently kind of run a survey asking people in terms of like, are they implementing some sort of data quality solution or data observability solution. And some are, 30% of them were using custom solutions. About 30% were doing some sort of pre-bought solution. And there's still this pretty big gap in the last like 30-ish% that are not doing anything whatsoever. So it is interesting as people are trying to figure out what is the right solution overall in order to try to like manage all of these mission critical apps overall.
That's great, Ben. So a lot of people, a lot of responsibilities, and then the responsibility for data teams is definitely increasing every day.
Yeah,
we see that across the board as well. Sanjeev, what are you seeing?
So what I'm seeing, Kunal, first of all, I have to say, I love the way you said success of an organization equals to success of pipelines. Many organizations, in fact, there was a recent survey, I think Ponemon Institute, they found that even small, medium-sized companies have over 100 SaaS applications. So you've got all of these data producers, and to Ben's point, you've got a explosion of tooling. So what happens is that you get these pipelines that are very brittle, and like you said, there are hundreds of them. In fact, in banks, there are thousands of them that run at night. How do you know something has broken? Typically, this is what happens in organizations. The data consumer, let's say a CFO, comes to work and finds out that the dashboard has data that suspiciously looks incorrect. At that point, all hell breaks loose. IT team goes into this firefighting mode. They're just trying to find out which pipeline broke, where did it break, and why. And if you don't have that visibility, then your IT team, instead of innovating and working on business strategic goals, they're literally just trying to do this root cause analysis. So the reason I've been so upbeat and I've researched the space of data observability for the last 2 years is because I feel that this is how we make our pipelines reliable. We make our data quality go higher because we are monitoring every aspect in the pipeline. And not only are we finding out if something broke, alerting the right people and setting in the remediation, but we are also proactively determining if something is going to go wrong. And if that is the case, then I can just take action before things break. So I think it's a very powerful, very forward-thinking way of ensuring that our pipelines are reliable and running. And if not, then we are taking corrective action quickly. So
makes a lot of sense, Sanjeev. To add to that, now more and more organizations are moving to the cloud. And given the exponential growth of, firstly, the data sets, and then the applications and the use cases of those data sets, right? Cloud costs is becoming a very important topic that data teams have to solve for now, in addition to all these other problems that we just spoke about before, right? How are they doing that? How are these cloud costs getting managed today? And what's missing in this world? Start with you, Ben.
Oh, perfect. I was going to say, I think sometime last year, the term like FinOps has been around for a little bit, but in the data world, it became like super popular. Everyone was kind of putting it around as everyone kind of saw what was coming, right? As things have become more constrained. I think kind of what ended up happening over the last maybe decade is the concept of like data science and being data driven was, let's do it at any cost plus very cheap capital. Just led to expanding data teams. Nothing, what is money? It doesn't really matter. And, now we're in a world where it does, right? So there's definitely been like a reduction in like, we're trying to figure out how to reduce costs. And honestly, what I usually got called in for a lot of clients was like, I get called in for performance issues for like, let's say a Snowflake connected Looker dashboard. And I could almost immediately tell them that I'm like, not only will I increase your performance, but I will reduce your cost, most likely because what I found is that a lot of these things that are driving costs are often bad design decisions somewhere, how things are connected, how things are built out for end users to kind of work with. And then they kind of just keep stacking more and more layers of compute onto things. And so that's kind of what's been, I feel like, has been driving it, at least from my end. In terms of like what's missing, I think we're starting to see a lot of solutions kind of come out there that like help monitor, especially like your data costs. So you can start having ownership, because I think that's like one of the things that's missing is like no one necessarily takes ownership of certain pipelines, and that can end up kind of driving a lot of those costs without knowing it. I was actually talking to someone, I don't know if you've talked to Ming Cheng of Blue Sky, and he was telling me that there was some query that was running every day for one of his clients that was charging them $100 every day and failing. And sure, it's not a big deal, but the joke he put was like, had that been an employee that was going out to lunch every day, they'd have to get that charge approved.
Right.
And so there was just this cost that was recurring every day. So I think there's just a lot of monitoring that's kind of starting to get implemented so that people can start owning and tracking exactly what workloads are driving specific costs. So it's this combination of like poor design choices and lack of monitoring that I've found is kind of driving a lot of these costs, and people kind of need to improve upon going forward.
And we've all heard about the runaway job over the weekend that cost $100,000, right?
Yeah.
Sanjeev, what are you saying?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Ben said. Poor design. When I started my career, I was really big into data modeling. And then people said, oh, why do we need a data model? Cloud has infinite resources. Let's just throw resources at a problem. And there was a stampede for people moving into the cloud. But now in 2023, cost has become a very sticky issue. And now what I'm seeing is that even I talked quite a bit about data observability a few minutes ago, but if you even see the trajectory of data observability is gone through already 3 different iterations, if you may. When it first came out, people thought data observability is all about data quality monitoring and just helping improve data quality. Then businesses said data quality is the low-hanging fruit. Absolutely, no question asked, hugely critical. But what about the pipeline? So then pipeline became the second use case. Today, probably one of the major use cases of observability is FinOps, is trying to understand where am I incurring cost. Like, you were joking about this runaway query. These data people, myself included, are guilty of running Cartesian joins on premises. But what was the worst thing that could happen on premises? I would run a Cartesian join by mistake, a poorly
Block
written
somebody else's jobs.
Yeah, it would just slow things down, and then somebody would be like, "What the hell is going on? Let's go kill this query," and then back to normal. But today, what will happen? The CFO will get $100,000 bill. So you need guardrails.
Yeah.
There is a dark side to pay as you go, and that dark side is that you don't have that consistency and the knowledge of what it's going to cost you to run those SQL queries. So ideally, we want tools that can estimate this is the cost of running a query, and then midway, if it thinks it's going out of bounds, kill it, and then automatically notify the staff and say, you know what, this workload was consuming too many resources. Maybe the hardware was over provisioned.
Yeah.
Maybe there are more instances that are being used and they're just consuming cost, and nobody's watching this extra cost. In cloud, you pay for everything.
That's right. And I think it's all about the maturity of the organization. And then add to that the catalyst of the macroeconomic conditions that we have. FinOps is definitely becoming front and center.
Yeah. Can I add one more interesting fact to this? I was blown away. Recently, I read an article in the Protocol website. The cloud bill, AWS cloud bill for Accenture, runs into tens of millions of lines. There were thousands.
Tens of millions of line items on the bill.
Yes.
Wow.
It's in.
That must be a pretty big bill.
There are 1,000 teams in Accenture using AWS all over the world. So the question is, how do you find out what services you're not using, but you're paying for it? You cannot do it manually.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So now, since we're talking about data teams and all of the roles that these guys have to do, the demand for data experts is far exceeding the supply of any data team member, whether that's a data scientist or a data analyst or a data engineer or a data operations person, right? How are companies filling these roles today, and what can they do better?
Yeah.
Start with you again, Ben.
I was gonna point. I just again ran a survey over like 400, mostly data engineers, honestly, and I asked them kind of what's the biggest problem their teams are facing. I mean, that was amongst other questions, but the biggest problem most teams were facing was like talent and hiring, right? Like finding new talent, and I felt like that really resonated because I remember when I came out of college. One of the issues I had was like I learned about your traditional databases, kind of third normal form, that normalization, things of that nature, and started working on for a BI team. And I was probably working for that team for 6 months before I realized I was looking at something that was a different paradigm. It was a data warehouse and not a traditional database model, right? Like you're like, okay, I can kind of see IDs here, so it's kind of the same. They're called keys, but same idea. But it took a while for me to like connect with that. So I think there's a couple of aspects where like one, you're missing some of the upskilling in college, right? Like the actual development of those skills. And then two, I think there's always kind of this gap even in onboarding that I've noticed for a lot of clients where it's like they just don't have something there that maybe someone could get up to speed very quickly on what exactly their world is, especially if you're just coming out of college and you've just got these baseline skills, especially in the data space. There's so much specialization that it's hard for someone to pick those, I think, skills up at like college. Luckily, there's a lot more resources now. So like, I think there are ways that even companies could be like, hey, let's buy you a book, like Joe Reese's Data Engineering Fundamentals book. If you're hiring a data engineer out of college, like it's $50, have them go through it, maybe have like a quick exam afterwards, and cheap training for you. So I think there's a lot of options for training. I just think that companies need to make it clearer and less ambiguous to new hires, especially new hires who are just coming out of college, to kind of like meet that need. Because if you're hiring a technical person out of college, they probably have the technical expertise. They just need that specialization factor, just a little bit of extra training to be like a good data engineer, a good data scientist.
Right. And then if they're not coming from college, if they're coming from, say, the Oracle or the Teradata world into this modern data world, again, it's all about retooling and retraining.
Yeah, exactly.
Sanjeev.
Kunal, I have to share with you my personal story.
Please.
I did my engineering bachelor's a long time ago. At that time, we didn't have online resources. There were only 2 languages we were asked to learn and be proficient in college: Pascal and Fortran. Needless to say,
Definitely the most modern data languages that we can use today.
Even then, when I graduated, I can guarantee I was completely unfit to get a job with that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of like self-education. When I got my first job, I was working for Oracle. I was helping our customers out. I noticed that there was only one difference between me and the people I was trying to help. And that was an acronym which nobody uses these days. I'm not going to spell it out. Those who don't know can look it up. It's RTFM. So the only difference is I read the manual, and they were trying to wing it. So my point is that I just want listeners to know that in spite of this tough economic times that the tech industry is going through right now, we'll get over it by end of this year. Maybe it'll take a little bit longer by beginning of next year. So this do not forget, this is a golden era of data. You own your career. There are so many online resources. You can get a free account to Google BigQuery, pick a free online resource, and you can teach yourself. If you are unsure, there are a ton of Slack communities. Everybody has a Slack community today. Contribute to social media posts. There are tons of podcasts. Subscribe to those podcasts. Get certified. So my point is that there's no excuse today to not be able to upskill yourself.
And our world changes so fast in the modern data stack, right? So whatever you've learned last year is probably not going to be relevant 2 years from today.
I was reviewing a training class for a friend of mine on cloud strategy, cloud migration, and he talks about, instances and all that. And I was like, no, wait, you haven't covered serverless. Some of your training is already outdated.
Right. There you go. So you've got to learn, and then you've got to keep up with everything that's going on. Any resources that either of you would love to share, we can put that in the chat as well, so everybody gets an access to that. And everybody listening as well, feel free to add the resources that you guys refer to, so everybody else here can benefit from that. Lack of experts, what part will automation play in operationalizing data ops?
Yeah, I think, earlier we kind of talked about like the fact that like companies have, in some cases, thousands of data pipelines, right? And like that just forces the need for automation, right? Like it's getting to the point where you can no longer have a DBA kind of manage everything themselves. We also earlier referenced things like runaway queries, right? So I think there's a lot of places where data ops is going to play a role, where it's going to kind of take that next step in like smart DBA almost, right? Like we've kind of done some of that with like things like Snowflake and other things where you can kind of reduce some of it, but I think it's going to start taking away maybe some of the data pipelines management, as well as things like even maybe cost management in order to like make sure everything is managed in such a way that you're not having to constantly track everything yourself, because of the, like you said, we're talking about talent. You're not going to find enough talent to manage all of it. You're not going to, have enough time in the day for every data application that you want to manage.
And even if you did, their time is better spent doing other critical tasks like creating those applications and running them.
Yeah.
Sanjeev, anything to add there?
Yeah, great points. I in my last response, I ended up by saying like serverless, for instance. What is serverless? It is we are taking away this, like as AWS says, undifferentiated heavy lifting. This task of picking instances, sizing them, and we're taking that away because guess what? It has no business value. So the business value only comes when you run the business logic and the workload, so hence serverless. So automation is super critical. Now, for the topic that we are talking today, why is automation very critical is because of some of the things that I've already mentioned. If I'm running a workload and the workload is going off the guardrails that I've put in place, automate, tell people, tell the orchestration engine, go, into remediation mode. So automation is critical to take care of all of these processes in a timely manner.
Yeah, Sanjeev, you work with a lot of companies, right? Are you seeing some tasks more than the others getting automated first? Like where are the companies today in that automation journey?
So monitoring is a great example. Automatically monitor and notify if there is an anomaly. I'm seeing this in data security these days. It's like at the moment you detect that there might be some user behavior that is unexpected, then automatically take action. It's too late for somebody to say, oh, let me go figure out, oh, there was a credit card fraud 24 hours ago. It's too late.
Right. So it helps you get stuff on time, maybe even proactively as well. Automation, right? This is a fun one. What are your data ops and data teams predictions for 2023? Start off with you again, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is more just like a personal low-level thing, but like the reduction of SFTP jobs, I am both looking forward to. Just I'm seeing a lot more clients use things like data sharing, which just means you're removing so much in terms of like things that need to be under data ops. It's like, why are we still taking care of something that, even referencing SFTP can sometimes feel antiquated, but I was using it at Facebook and plenty of companies are using it, but with these new solutions, it's like, let's reduce the amount of pipelines we have to manage. Let's just have the data already preset in the way we need. No need to have data duplicated, multiple times. So that's like a personal goal of mine, to see more of that, reducing unneeded pipelines in general, just because we can start removing some integrations here and there. I also think there's kind of an increased focus on the basics, regardless, right? Like we've talked about that in terms of like data modeling, data quality, just all these things, because in order to go anywhere further in terms of like data ops and data products, a lot of these basics, I think, still need to be taken care of. I think we're continually realizing the benefits of having solid and reliable data sets. Everything from even things like ChatGPT, it's like that doesn't exist without the data set underneath. And that's going to, I think, continue. You can't build any of these models or and get any sort of business value out of things that aren't reliable. So that's the other thing I think I'm seeing people care a little bit more about moving forward into 2023.
But we should be talking about ChatGPT, but that's going to take another hour. Sanjeev, predictions for data ops and data teams.
Kunal, you're asking such tough questions. How much time do we have?
How much of time we need?
No, I'll just stick to just some of my top things when it comes to looking into future. The first thing that comes to my mind is that everybody knows that most organizations today are using more than one cloud. So when you live in this hybrid, multi-cloud, even edge, you don't have a good set of tooling for like a single pane of glass or a control plane where I can observe, I can manage my workloads moving between different clouds. For FinOps reasons, what if I want my tool to tell me that this job, the SQL that you just ran, it'll run faster in this cloud, or this machine learning training model would run faster here, so I can then just quickly move things around. to me, that I'm thinking this is where the puck is going to go, because we need this multi-cloud management console for data ops, which today does not exist, or it's in early stages. The second thing that people have heard me say a lot about is that the metadata space is a mess. And what I mean by that is that there are all of these tools, there are the catalogs, the orchestration, the data observability, data quality, master data management, even security, privacy, identity. All of these rely on metadata, but they all work in their own silos. If we are going to be successful, then we need to unify these metadata stores, whether you call it data governance or whatever you want to call it, but that metadata is key. And without a cohesive consolidation of metadata, we are going to literally live in islands. So that, to me, is the second one. I want to only add one more because I'm also very passionate about data products. I think this is a new way of for us to develop the outcomes that we already develop: reports, dashboards, machine learning models, spreadsheets. You call it whatever you want, but put a product management discipline around it, so you can control it. Put it in GitHub. Be able to do A/B testing on it. Have a proper documentation, release notes that go with it. Constantly version it. Let people know that this is the latest version of data product because it has the freshest data. Again, it comes back to pipelines and all of that. So I just want to stick to those three, although.
Those are all great predictions. So what I gathered from all of this conversation is we are definitely advancing as data teams and data companies. We've gone into day 2, day 3 types of problems now. No longer talking about which stack is better. No longer talking about which tooling is better. We're talking about outcomes. The rest of the conference is focused on exactly these topics. So if you guys would like to learn a little bit more about orchestration, data ops, data teams, automation, FinOps, look at the calendar and you'll see tons of topics spoken by the data teams and the practitioners who are actually putting this into practice. So I encourage all of you to go and check those out. Ben and Sanjeev, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It was great to hear all your thoughts and comments.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.